Hello and welcome everybody to the Salesforce for Everyone YouTube channel. Today we are going to have a special guest. Her name is Chelsea Fink, and against all odds, she was able to land a Salesforce job in November 2020 in the middle of a pandemic and in a year that most of us consider to probably be the worst year to have something exceptional and positive happening in your life. And against all of that, I mean, landing a job in November 2020 is already an amazing accomplishment. But on top of that, she was able to get certified, find available positions, make a career change. And with all of that going on, she was also pregnant. So there is a lot to unpack here. I'm really excited to have Chelsea on because I think she can show the audience what's possible if we don't get in our own way and we just know that things are possible even in a year like this, if we just focus and move forward and get over these obstacles. So with that, I want to welcome Chelsea to the call.
Hey Brad.
Hey.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for being so willing to hop on. So I think your story is incredible, truly incredible. And I think there's a lot here for the audience to take away. I know we have a lot of people who are tenured Salesforce professionals. We have a lot of people who they know how amazing the Salesforce ecosystem is and how much possibility there is in the Salesforce space. But I would say there are just as many people, if not more, that are saying, Salesforce is too hard to get into. There's not a clear path. It's hard to get started. It's hard to follow the steps to start a career in this industry because there's too much competition or whatever the excuse is. There's a lot of them and a lot of people want to follow them. So I think to kick things off, let's tell, I think we'll tell the story over the course of this, call here. But I think let's start just with what were you up to before Salesforce was your career path, and how did you find out about it, and how did you sort of shift into even wanting to care more about Salesforce?
Yeah. So before I learned about Salesforce, I was working in a construction office and doing kind of like the back end of a sales. And we used a CRM at my previous position, but it wasn't Salesforce. Mm-hmm. So I was kind of familiar with CRMs and how they were used. And then one of my favorite things to do is to listen to Choose FI, personal finance. And I heard your episode and it really spoke to me because I was like, wow, this is something that, you just need a bachelor's degree based on kind of what you were saying, and you don't need previous IT experience. So it really intrigued me whenever I heard your episode.
Awesome.
That,
okay.
That was the first time I learned what Salesforce, was. I knew what CRMs were, but I really had no previous experience with Salesforce. Excellent.
So number one, for you and the audience, I had no idea that it had anything to do with Choose FI or the podcast episode or anything like that. So that's really cool. So you hear about it, and obviously, I think the Choose FI episode I was on was pretty compelling for some people, but you had to be in the right frame of mind to be open to that conversation at the time.
Sure.
And for me, that's my life. Like, if anyone has not heard that Choose FI, I think it's episode 117. If you haven't heard that, that's pretty much my life in a nutshell. And we recorded that a couple of years ago, but it is still very much my life in a nutshell. And so you heard that, you heard about Salesforce, you were sort of familiar with CRM systems and maybe like the back end, like there are these tools that operate the back end of a company. And so then you thought, okay, like Salesforce could be an option for me. So after hearing that episode and sort of getting that bug in your ear, how long was it before you really just said, you know what, I'm going to figure out what this trailhead thing is and start moving forward?
The same day.
Right. All right.
Whenever I heard your episode, I was like, well, first off, I've always wanted to work from home. That has always been like my dream.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I heard what you were saying about you can work from home and make a great income and, how you work certain hours of the day, you can work your own hours, that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
I was so intrigued. So as soon as I listened to the episode, I went and was like, what is Trailhead about? So I actually found the Facebook group in the show notes. And then kind of got onto there, and then also created my Trailhead account the day that I listened to the episode. And I thought, let me just go ahead and make an account and see what it's all about.
That's really great. Yeah. And I think that's the mentality though, right? It's the people who hear something and they're not afraid of it, or I think it's okay to be questioning of new things. And like, is this really going to be something that's possible? Like, I'm okay with being questioning, but I think what you have to be careful of is coming up with one excuse and then latching on to that one excuse and saying, well, I can't do this because one thing. And then you just let that destroy your whole future.
Absolutely.
So obviously you were the exact opposite. And I'm sure you had your reservations, but at the same time, you went forward, you got on Trailhead, you joined the Salesforce for Everyone group, and you just immersed yourself immediately, clearly. And that's what it takes. I mean, you're never going to accomplish something without at least giving it, a little opportunity to sort of make a change in you. Okay. So I think that's really neat, just feeding into that. But there's a long way, and we talk about this on the YouTube channel and Salesforce for Everyone group. There's a big difference between messing around on Trailhead and landing a job. Those are two very different things.
Oh, absolutely.
So typically it's a progression, right? I mean, typically to land your first job, you're going to want to be certified. So maybe, I know every time somebody posts in a group and they're like, I got certified, the number one comment is congratulations. And then the number two comment is, tell me what you did. And I don't think it's the biggest secret on earth how you do it. I don't really think there's a silver bullet. It's not a weekend thing. It takes time.
Yeah.
But to answer the question that I know everyone wants to know the answer to, it's okay. Well, you got certified. How are you able to accomplish that? And I think it's a point to make here too, that you had a lot going on in your life at the point of moving through and getting the certification. So I want the audience to hear it from you. What were you up to at that point in your life, and how did you stay focused? I mean, so many people struggle to stay focused. How did you stay focused, and what steps did you follow to get your first certification?
Yeah. So in January of 2020, I found out I was pregnant with my first child. And of course I was working in the sales office with the public. And so whenever COVID kind of came about in, March, April in the US, it kind of made that need even greater. It kind of gave me that motivation, like, okay, I'm pregnant, I'm working with the public, like, I really would love to be able to work from home. And then, whenever COVID is not around anymore, I would love to work from home and just be around my son, as much as possible. So that really motivated me. And whenever I created my Trailhead account, whenever I first started, I was like, let me just see what this is all about. Let me just, log on. And once I kind of got the hang of it and started, getting some small wins under my belt in Trailhead, that motivated me even more.
Sure.
Trailhead, in my opinion, is almost to me feels like a little bit of like a video game. And I'm not like a video game person, but just as far as like the wins, I don't know if that makes sense, but
it does. Yeah.
That's kind of how it feels to me. And so the more you log in, the more you want to do better, or the more achievements or badges you get, the better you want to do. And I definitely did have a little bit of, thinking, well, I've never been in IT before, or that sort of thing. But once I actually got into Trailhead, I kind of understood what you were saying, that as long as I remember watching one of your YouTube videos, and it was basically like, are you thinking about doing this? It was kind of one of your earlier YouTube videos. And what you said was, you really just need to be somewhat good, generally good with computers. Yeah. And everywhere I've worked, I've always felt like I kind of would be the one to understand the computer system before everyone else or train other people on it. So that kind of gave me a little bit of confidence. I was like, well, I've always been the one to do that. So let me try this out.
Yeah.
And I was able to, work my way through the trails, especially the admin beginner trails and the trail mixes. And then that took me a few months. And of course, there was times where I would do a trail and I would be completely stumped as to what am I doing here, And I would just Google things. I would Google the error message I was getting and read some of the forums to see what I was doing wrong so that I could understand it better. Google was my best friend. And there was always, those Salesforce forums are amazing. There's anytime I would get an error message, there was a forum explaining what I was doing wrong.
Yeah.
And if I got frustrated, if it was something that I was just like, oh my goodness, this is so difficult. I was, if I had worked on something for hours and then I just could not pass a challenge, I was like, you know what? I need to step back and take a break. It's okay to not log into Salesforce for, a week or so, something like that. Take a break. Yeah. And then it never failed. As soon as I'd log back in, after I had some time to my brain had time to process it, I would pass it every single time.
Yeah, I think that's everything you just said there. I can tell by the way you're talking about it. It's so obvious to you and it's obvious to me, but it's not obvious to everyone that you can just Google these things. And there's such a huge knowledge base, I'll call it, of Salesforce information, because it's not just a couple hundred companies here and there that use it. This is globally, hundreds of thousands of companies using it. The questions have already been asked. You're not the first person doing something for the first time. As much as we all want to be unique and we all want to think we're the most creative people in the world, we're not, and I'm not. It's all been said and it's all been done. So it's out there. You just have to look for it a little bit. And I think the point you made about avoiding burnout, like it's gamified, like that's what I would call it, is that it's all these badges and it gives you that little push of motivation. That's like, oh my gosh, I accomplished something and I got all the answers right the first time. And it's motivated because they've gamified it. And that can be a little bit addicting, which can make you burn out. Because I do play video games, or I did a lot more in the past, and it's one of those things where like you can play a really great game, but if you play it for 8 hours straight, 3 or 4 days in a row, you just don't want to play it anymore. And if you burn yourself out like that, that can be one of the quickest ways to take something really good and destroy it. So
absolutely,
if you're feeling burnout, take a day off, take a week off, do whatever you need to do. I try to tell people that starting a Salesforce career is not necessarily a race, because whether you land your job in 4 months from now or 8 months from now, really when you're looking at a 20-year career, looking back at it, it's just not a big deal. And I know it feels like the world is like sitting on top of you right now, and those 4 months feel like forever right here at the moment. But looking back, it's going to feel like a summer. And then you landed your job. Instead of at the beginning of summer, it was at the end of summer, and it's okay.
That's it.
And I think the other thing you mentioned was, really in a nutshell, it was being resourceful. And when you came up against a problem, you were resourceful. And whether that was Facebook groups or LinkedIn or Googling or knowledge articles or Trailblazer community, it doesn't matter. Those are all resources. And you're going to do that the rest of your career. And I think for anyone who thinks you're not going to be Googling for answers when you're 10 years into your Salesforce career, then you're misunderstanding it, because I Google, if not every day, it's definitely a few times a week for stuff I've done 100 times before, but it doesn't matter because the feature changed. They change where you click the button. They change where it is in the setup menu. There's a little bit different release that handles it better. And you're always going to be Googling things. So just get used to it. It's probably the best skill you're going to have. So that's excellent. So I think to bring it all full circle, it's that clearly you had a lot going on. And so for anyone out there thinking, there's too much going on in my life, I can't get started. Maybe you're right. You know your own personal situation, but I would urge you to just get started and create some type of consistency. Maybe you can only do an hour a week, and that's all you can do. We'll do an hour a week. And hopefully you can find more and more time to dedicate to it, to move it forward. But you don't have to do everything today. You don't have to be certified next month. You don't have to land your job next year. You can take your time, just don't get burnt out and stay focused. So to sort of bring this around, I mean, I think the big question for people is probably, okay, you got certified. That's awesome. That's a huge hurdle. But how did you turn that certification into a job? Like that's a huge hurdle for a lot of people. So I'll let you answer that. How did you turn something like a podcast episode and get started on Trailhead and then getting certified? And how did that turn into landing a job? Like, what do you think some of the quick tips and strategies you could give to how did you actually achieve the goal?
Right. So when I got certified, I was actually 36 weeks pregnant, and which is insane. I mean, even saying it is like, that's mind blowing. But that also motivated me because I was like, I need to get my certification before the baby comes. So that was like another added layer to it. And then I was on maternity leave for a little while. So I did have some time to be applying to jobs and that sort of thing. But as far as advice, I would say the first thing to do, definitely update your resume, update your cover letter, update your LinkedIn. And that's definitely something, if you're not exactly sure how to do those things, there's some great resources in the Facebook group. There's people who kind of have given advice on how to do those things. And definitely as somebody who has never had that professional experience, put what you can on there, put what you have. If you have super badges, that sort of thing, put what you have on your LinkedIn and your resume. And, maybe even in your cover letter, spell out what types of things you can do so that they're familiar with it, so that shows that you do have experience. I think a lot of people will say, I don't have the experience, but really Trailhead is experience, it's just not, that professional experience, but it is experience.
No, I agree with you. And I think that's a huge point to make, is that when you're doing LinkedIn and your resumes and things like that, it's, I think don't discredit yourself. I always say sort of let the employers count you out. Don't count yourself out.
Absolutely.
Because you are valuable, whether you're a high school graduate with literally no experience, or if you're 35 years old with life experience, and maybe you have college, maybe you don't. Maybe you worked what you thought is a meaningless job, but I can pretty much guarantee you, because I've done a ton of LinkedIn reviews, that there is something about what you've done in the past that is meaningful and valuable, and you just need to think about it and how it translates. Chances are, even if you're working in the kitchen of a restaurant, chances are you helped train a new employee,
right?
Or you helped make your job more efficient or more productive by changing some little specific things about it. Maybe it was, the tables that you decided to work. Maybe these 4 tables were more efficient than working those 4 tables, or whatever it was. And that's just one example. And there are so many carryovers. Like, I love talking about teachers moving into Salesforce because they think I have no IT experience. And it's like, you literally deal with like 100 to 200 kids a day, and their parents and the management at the school, the vice principals and directors of specific groups and those are just 2 examples. There's so much that every profession does, and don't count yourself out. You're doing something valuable, whether you know it or not. You just have to take a step back and give yourself the opportunity to realize you actually do have valuable skills. And then you have to showcase that on your resume or your cover letter or your LinkedIn. And I think that's huge. So thank you for pointing that out.
And to add what you were saying, Brad, one way that I feel like people can figure out those things is to read some of the job descriptions and whatever key phrases they're putting in there. Find a way to relate your past experiences to those key phrases. And then as far as maybe like you were saying, I always think of like healthcare professionals. Maybe it's a nurse who wants to move into Salesforce.
Mm-hmm.
If you can apply to jobs maybe in the healthcare field, that's direct related experience, you know? So you have to get creative and figure out ways to word your resume items and word your cover letter.
Yeah, I think you're right. That's really another good point of your related experience. If you worked in sales at a car dealership, you have sales experience. You're going to be great in a sales operations. You may not realize it, but you understand sales processes and how those work. It's amazing. If you've worked at a job, chances are you understand more about business process than you're giving yourself credit for.
Absolutely.
And the whole point of Salesforce is streamlining business processes. So you have to give yourself credit. So I think that's excellent. So to get the attention and to showcase your skill, you focused on resume, cover letter, LinkedIn profile. So what about looking for jobs? I mean, did you, how many jobs were you applying for? A lot of jobs, a few jobs? Did you know somebody? Like, how did you jump over that bridge? You got over I think a big hurdle is getting certified. The next hurdle is showcasing your value properly on sites like LinkedIn. And then another huge hurdle is just landing interviews. So how did you figure out how to make that come together?
Sure. So when I was applying for jobs in the search, I just typed Salesforce. I didn't, I feel like the less detail you give these searches, the better.
Yeah.
So I just typed Salesforce. And then of course for location, either, I wanted to work remotely, so I typed remote. But if someone is, if someone is okay with not working remotely, that could be an added benefit, because if, a company's looking for a certain area, you might be the only Salesforce admin in your area. So that could be a benefit. But I was typing in Salesforce and remote, and any job title that I wasn't really sure what exactly it was, I was clicking on it just to see, are there admin duties in this job that I'm not familiar with? And a lot of the jobs, instead of Salesforce admin, were popping up as an analyst position or having different labels. And so I was definitely clicking on all of them. And I actually applied. Thankfully, my mom was helping me out with the baby most days of the week so that I could be applying to jobs. And I ended up applying to about 70 jobs over the course of maybe a month and a half.
Wow. Yeah, that's a lot.
So there were jobs on there. You said earlier that this is one of the worst times for job postings and things, but there are a lot of companies out there looking to hire people right now. So it definitely, and new jobs, new Salesforce jobs were popping up every single day. So it definitely, there was definitely availability.
No, I mean, obviously I agree with you. That's why I'm out here talking about it. But yeah, for the audience out there, I've seen too many times people saying there's no job openings, there's nothing to look for. And I think it's another characteristic of what made you successful is that I don't know what that job title means. And you realize that probably 70% of people say, I don't realize what that job title means, I'm going to scroll down. But you say, I don't know what that job title means, I'm going to click on it and I'm going to look at the responsibilities. And all that means is that you weren't interested in shortcuts. You weren't interested in the fastest path to the end result. You were interested in making sure that you didn't, fail to uncover some stones along the way that might have been the answer. And that's all it is. And it's that attitude of diligence and focus and understanding why you're here, and you're not interested in shortcutting the path to success. And that's what's going to put you in front of other people. And I think that might be the biggest takeaway from this whole thing is stop looking for shortcuts and start looking for maybe the long way to this, and start looking to immerse yourself and really understand these job postings and what you're doing. And that's how you're going to find the available position. Because if you're the one taking shortcuts, then you're just like everybody else, and you're going to be applying for the jobs that have 400 applicants because those are the easy ones to find. Why don't you find the ones that are maybe they're hiding a little bit. Maybe the person didn't put the job posting up with the right title, or the job description wasn't clear. But once you read it, and you take the time to look at it, you realize, hey, this might just be a good fit for me. And then you're one of like 20 or 30 people applying instead of 400. Excellent.
And you're absolutely right about that, because I definitely found the website I was using, it tells you how many applicants for certain jobs. And you're definitely right about that, because the ones that were a little bit more, you weren't really sure what it was, definitely had less applicants.
Yeah, I think I talked to a guy earlier this week, and he was applying for a job, and they gave him an interview, and he sent me the job posting, and I looked at it, and there were only like 7 applicants. And I was like, did they really call you for an interview? And he's like, yeah. And because it almost seemed like a fake job posting, because no applicants. It was like, what is this? Like, is this even real? And it was very real. And he's doing the second interview for the job. And it's like, they're out there. And I mean, you just have to, keep at it. I mean, I'm sure you were looking at it daily, or at least every other day, to try to figure out what you'd missed. And that's what it takes. And you might have to deal with that for a few months. So, I mean, I guess with that being said, how long that's a grind. I would call it a grind. So how long were you in this grind of, I'm certified, but I don't have a job yet. So I'm applying, and I'm trying to get interviews, and I'm taking these phone calls and whatever else. How long did you have to go through that before you were finally able to take the deep breath and go, I did it, I got an offer?
I would say roughly about a month and a half. I started applying until the time that I actually landed the job. Out of 70 applications, I think I had 6 phone interviews.
Wow.
So, I mean, you definitely have to be applying to a lot to get those phone calls.
But if I look at that, and I think most people, it's that they apply for 10 jobs and they don't get any phone calls. And then they give up instead of going for the next 10, because they look at it as an infinite path of applications with no phone calls. And when you can get to the end, when you go, okay, a month and a half, 6 weeks later, you landed the job. I think if everybody knew they would land the job within 6 to 8 weeks, they would be happy to grind it out for 6 to 8 weeks. But I think what we block ourselves with is it going to be 6 to 8 weeks, or is it going to be 16 to 18 weeks of doing this, or 52 weeks of doing this? Like, I don't know if I can last that long, but all you just have to put your best foot forward every morning and just give it your best shot, and it will come to you. You just have to stay diligent. It's that diligence again. So yeah, I think that's awesome. So I'm sure your new job is it's a transition, I'm sure. You probably have a lot to learn and a lot happening really quickly. It's exciting, but also challenging. And so I just want to say, I think number one, is there anything you want to say before we, give our audience, they might want to reach out to you, so they can definitely find you. I'm sure in the Salesforce for Everyone Facebook group, is that the best place to find you, or LinkedIn, or
there, or LinkedIn? I can definitely give you my LinkedIn for the notes.
All right, so I'll drop the LinkedIn, your LinkedIn profile into the description of the video. Any last words for the audience?
I would just say, just to reiterate what you said earlier, be resourceful. If I know a lot of people in the group will say, I don't have a lot of money to be spending on all these exam fees, that sort of thing. I would Google, going back to Google, I would Google exam or Salesforce admin promo code, and there's all kinds of different websites and threads of people who are very generous and will say, here's a promo code. It's, one I found the other day was $150 off the $200 fee. And the ones that I found were free, but I think those are a little bit harder to come by right now. But I mean, just be resourceful, just look through the group, look through Google, just be resourceful. I think that's the best advice I could give. Okay.
Awesome. I think that's great. Well, I just wanted to say congratulations on your new baby. Congratulations on the new job. Thank you for being part of the Salesforce Ohana. We are so lucky to have someone like you to just be an everyday member of the group who has amazing advice. And I think that that's a takeaway for everyone here, is that every single person in this group has something meaningful to give. and they might be hiding, that they might put up a post a week or a post a month. But everyone has a valuable perspective, and we just need to be aware of that. So thank you so much, Chelsea, for being on.
Thank you.
And thanks everybody for watching.
Thanks.